What is up and welcome back. Happy Friday. If you guys are watching this video, it's probably happy Sunday because we have been doing a lot on this car. I'll explain that in just a second, but as you guys just saw, I figured out all the stuff for the intercooler. If you guys watched part 3 of this supercharger install, you'll know that at the end of that video, I wasn't able to completely finish all of the intercooler piping. And so in the meantime, in between videos, I got it handled and I'll explain everything in just a second. Today is part 4. We are gonna be doing the transmission. Actually, we're gonna be pulling out the transmission to do the clutch, but you guys have seen me do that. I have multiple videos on where I've done clutches on multiple different cars. So this video isn't gonna be all about the clutch and the transmission stuff. It's actually gonna be about the Csc Delete, which is the concentric slave cylinder on these cars. I don't remember what year this is, but on the later model year cars, they actually have an internal slave cylinder, and it's a big pain in the butt, especially if it goes out, you have to pull the trans to get to it. So Z-Speed Performance made a CMAK kit, which is pretty much the kit that takes the slave cylinder on the inside and removes it and puts it on the outside for much easier and actually much better shifting too, because using the external slave cylinder itself seems to just like, I don't know, bite harder or something. So we're gonna be installing that. Actually, let me show you this kit. So this is it from Z-Speed Performance. You guys can see it is the CMAK kit, and this is everything that comes along with it. This is a plate actually that bolts on the inside of the bell housing. It's gonna be your new fork that moves the pilot bearing. You have this is actually a tube that bolts onto the inside of the bell housing. I'll explain this all as I go along, and then you can see there is the external slave. This will bolt on the outside, and then with that there will be a clutch line that actually goes to the car. So doesn't look all that bad, it's really not. And yeah, so once I get the transmission out, we'll be able to install this. So just like I said, once I start this project, it's not really gonna be a how-to on how to remove the transmission out. You guys know, you've seen multiple videos, you see how I take the bolts out. They're just in a different configuration. It really isn't much different than a 350Z or a G35 or something like that. Okay, and that being said, why don't we get into the explanation and show you guys in full detail everything that's going on with the intercooler piping and all that. You can see the configuration is much different than I thought it was going to be, and we have all the tubes and couplers. So we actually did have all the tubes and couplers. There was one that I actually had to source from my box over there. It was a little bit longer and was making it a lot easier for me to put this in here. It's actually this coupling up in here. It was just a little bit longer and straight to be able to put this pipe in. So before I tell you everything I had to do this, I had all the right piping. I did not know that this pipe is in a different configuration for the 370Z. When I was looking up on Soho's website, it was showing a 370Z, and the pipe was coming across here and then coming down and going up in here. I think that the reason why they have this changed, instead of going over the bar, it goes under and then uses this 90 because of the headlight. I think the headlight is bulkier than the 370Z. So that was my bad. I had everything, so I don't want you guys thinking that they didn't send me parts or something like that. It was just, I'm new to this. This is my first time doing this particular kit, so I wasn't too sure on the configuration on how it was supposed to be. But you can see everything in here is now nicely routed. So the charge pipe sits in here nicely, goes up into the blower. I even like move the horn up out of the way, trying to make as much room as possible. The harness kind of tucks up and around here. I tried to make it the most natural way that it was sitting. I gotta like cut these off just for, you know, aesthetics, because, you know, I'm like super anal about that. And then you can see like the clamps. I tried putting the clamps in all configurations on where I could get to them. This one is like the only one that I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna get to it, but it was where the most space was at, and so I tried to do it in the most like logical way. Then we have the Raceport Turbo Smart blow off. You can see I have the vacuum line going up, and then everything up here is all bolted together. You can see I had the elbow for here. This is nice and tight, and then this also bolts to here. They supply you with a new bolt. It's longer to put into here. So once you're ready to bolt it in its final place, it'll be bolted right here. I think it's a 5/16 or 3/16 head on the Allen. I don't remember. But other than that, you can see there's enough space. It's not moving anywhere. Nothing's moving. And then I have everything else ran. So he is doing a couple gauges. So I changed out the port here with a pressure gauge for the boost. And then I'm running it in here, it'll go inside. And then this port, that instead of it being capped, I ran this line down somewhere underneath. Tried to make it as clean and out of the tire space as possible. And then it goes to the blow off. So that's essentially what I did. I had to come out here that night. It was like literally like driving me nuts. I really wanted to have the intercooler piping finished on the last video, but I was just like, you know what? I'll get back at it, start fresh, go look on Soho's like website, see if I can figure out anything different. And so I did. So I came out here, I had to do a little bit more trimming over here, a little bit more stuff had to come out so that way this could be pushed in and the 90 could be put on. But other than that, everything fit pretty nicely. And I guess we're almost ready to put the bumper on. I don't think there's anything else I need to do. No, that's it. I got a filter. I put a filter on the oil cooler plate now. We did an oil change, and that's essentially all the stuff you guys didn't see. Not stuff that's real important to show. You guys have been following the build really closely, so you know everything that's pretty much gone on except for those few things. And I mean, that's it for the Supercharger. This Soho kit is so nice. Like, I would install it again, no questions asked, on another car. And so I don't know, I really enjoyed it. Now that I kind of know the orientation, how it goes, I think the next one will go a lot smoother and probably go quicker too. So yeah, Supercharger done. Fin out of here. Next, time to pull the transmission and get started on the CMAK kit. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys kind of a breakdown real quick, show you what I'm gonna be doing underneath here. There is one subtle difference other than the G37 and the 350Zs that I noticed. So the bell housing, you can see, actually sits in here. One thing that I've found is this plate right here. If you remove this plate, there's these bolts here, these bolts here, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then there's the ones that go through the steering rack. There's a nut on the other side. I believe it's a 19. But if you remove that, this whole plate comes down and it's much easier to get to all the bolts that are on the front of the bell housing. So this is really the only difference. Other than that, you can see, here's the internal slave I was telling you about. You can see all the hydraulic lines going in. So this is the part that we'll be replacing. But you can see there's like the orange heads on the bolts. There's like one right here, and then there's two up there. And then you can see the backsides here, backside here, are all on this side. That's why it's easier to remove this. And then there's the ones that follow around the bell housing. So other than that, it's not really much different than the G35. So what I'll be doing is be taking the 10s off of here, the 10s off of here, the plugs, and taking the harness completely out of the way and moving it probably onto the other side of here so it's out of my way. I'll be taking off the starter and then this harness and tucking it out of the way. And then after I take the bell housing bolts off, then I'll take this off and then I'll put it on jacks and kind of scoot it back. So it's not going to be real different, like I said, from the G35 or the 350Z. And then the other thing I have to do is I have to take off the two heat shields and the drive shaft. And then other than that, I think I'll be home free. Okay, now so you can see what I was talking about. with that plate taken off, you can see I can get to these 10s that are actually holding the bell housing to the block, and I can also remove this window, and that's the starter. So it's a lot of work just to take off those 4 little bolts, but it'll make your life a whole lot easier. Okay, a little bit time has passed. I've been wrestling with the transmission a little bit, but to show you, I have it sitting where I need it to, fully accessible to get into here. I removed the slave cylinder off of here, so now I'll be able to do this, remove the clutch and the flywheel, change the new flywheel and clutch, and then we'll put the CMAK kit on here. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take this clip out of here, and we're gonna pull, actually we have to unbolt this also, but then we'll pull this metal portion out, and then we'll undo this bolt and this other bolt, and we'll pull off the hydraulic throwout bearing. So that piece will be completely discarded, and then we'll take off this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, and I believe the upper bolt, so that way we're able to mount the new fork plate to it. But first, let's disassemble the hydraulic throwout bearing. Okay, and now you can see the window is out. I have the metal lines out, and when you remove the hydraulic throwout bearing, this is what it looks like. I have to wipe down the shaft a little bit and then clean this up for the install of that new plate. I'll show you the orientation, but while this is out, we're also going to take out the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 12mm bolts. You'll see why we do that in just a second, but first we're going to put on the snout for the new throwout bearing. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, make sure you drain the transmission, because if you don't, there is 3 bolts, the 2 lower and the next one up that you can see is actually holding back fluid from the transmission. So if you decide not to do it before and you decide to go this route, at least make sure you have a pan where it's going to be able to catch it. So I'm going to let this finish draining before I do anything else, and then we'll clean up inside the bell housing, and then we'll continue on. All right, included in this kit will be a bag that has 5 bolts that are gold and longer for the holes that we just took out. And you'll also have these black screws that will be flush mount in here. You can see that these are kind of countersunk. This is the head, what they look like. What you'll do is put some blue Loctite on these when you put them in. Also, the orientation for the plate is like this. The pointed area is going towards the slave cylinder. So make sure that you do that. It's important to make sure it lines up so the pointed part goes towards the slave cylinder. Okay, and installed, that's what it should look like. Next we're gonna do is we are going to lube up on here, because that's where the throwout bearing will be riding. We'll be installing the boot. Make sure when you install the boot that the protruding side goes inward, and then we'll be putting on the fork and making sure all of that is done. One thing to show you, I kind of have it mocked up. This is how it's supposed to sit. One thing you have to make sure is you can see that there are flat sides where the fork is on there. This is the proper way to have it set up. But before we install it, we're going to make sure that we apply a lot of grease to the insides of here, where there's going to be friction, anywhere that there's going to be metal to metal touching. Sorry, I was using my finger. Anywhere where metal to metal is touching on the insides here, here, in here, and then on the face between the bearing and the fork itself. So we're going to make sure we grease that up, and then we'll install this. And final product, that's with the CMAK kit installed. You guys can see, went together pretty easy. It's not a really bad kit to do, and it makes it way better. So the only thing we'll have to do is on the outside of the transmission, but we'll do that once the transmission is back together. So now I'm gonna get going, take the clutch off, take the flywheel off, replace it with the new stuff, and then we're gonna put the transmission back on and get this car on the ground. Okay, clutch off. You can see just the flywheel. He had an aftermarket one. It's a Luke. You can see right here, it's a Luke. A lot of BMWs use the Luke brand. It's a good aftermarket brand. Doesn't look too smoked. Looks all right. But the new one's gonna be beefier, better grip power. So we're gonna take this out and put the new one in. Okay, the flywheel is out. Everything looks clean, there's no issues. I also wanted to point out that you guys can see on here, you can see this pin right here in between the two bolt holes. That pin is specific to the flywheel. You have to line it up on the flywheel or your car will not run. So if you look on here, this even says align. This little pin from the back side, you can see has to fit on there. A lot of people miss that and then they put the car together and then it won't start, and it's because they have it over here. The flywheel will sit on and it'll look like it's flat, but it will not be, and it's because of the teeth, counting the teeth on the crank sensor. It won't be right. So make sure you guys align the little hole to the pin that's on the crank. That's my only tip I can give you guys for the clutch stuff. All right, CMAK kit done. Clutch done. Flywheel done. This thing's ready to go back together, so let's get this thing in here. All right, and the transmission is now all the way back in, tightened up. I kind of got ahead of myself and started putting in the slave cylinder, so I'll explain this to you real quick. You can see the bracket, how it sits. It kind of sits it flat like this. There is one hole back in here that actually goes to the starter, so you actually have to take these 14s off and pull off the slave cylinder itself. Once you pull that off, you can put the bolt through, tighten up the starter, and then you just put these back on. There are spacers you guys can see underneath there on each side. Make sure they sit on top here, the spacers, so that way this hole lines up nice and straight. Then you'll take the 15, you'll tighten the 15 down, and then it's just really just adding the line. All this is provided with the kit, and then put it all back together. So I'm gonna put the drive shaft in, hook up the exhaust, and then we're gonna be done underneath this car. This project's coming to an end. I still have to do the Torque Solutions short shifter. That's gonna go in. I'll show you that real quick. And then I have to do the 525 pump. I don't know if that's gonna be in this video. It might be in the next video actually, since we're like, you know, wrapping this all up with everything underneath here. So we're gonna be done with this. I'm gonna put the drive shaft in and then we're gonna get done with this video. Okay, real quick, I wanted to show you guys the Torque Solutions shifter. This, in my opinion, is like one of the best shifters. It's definitely the shortest that I've felt, especially for the G35s and the 350Zs. This is the shifter. I already took the liberty of taking this shifter cup off of this ball. It just presses off, you press the new one on, and then they give you this and these. It's really easy, goes together really easy. You can see it has these two collars right here that will actually slip in here and in here before you put it down through the hole, so that way the bolt can go through it on the shifter linkage. And then they give you new bolts. You can see there's 3 new bolts for the plate. This ring, this collar, sits in the bottom right in there. And then you put the spring on top and the shifter cup, and then this will go on top of this, and then the other diamond plate will go on top. So I'll show you it installed, but this goes in first and then the spring and cup. So yeah, that's just the main thing to remember. Okay, now we're legit like running out of time as far as daylight and stuff goes. So you can see this is the final install. Let me get the glare off the camera. You can see the hex head bolts with the washers. The plate, the factory plate, is sitting on top of the new plate, is underneath that, and then the cup sits in there. You know that there's the groove on the left hand side, and then where the lockout is at is that nub and the bump. You can see, sorry, this like light is really bright, so I'm trying to just give you enough light to see. There you go. And then the shifter is installed. So now all I have to do is go underneath. I'll put those 2 little collars on and then put the bolt through, and the shifter will be installed, and then everything will be done on the transmission. Okay, and now the shifter is all in. You can see everything's back to normal. Sits a little bit lower, but it feels really good. You can see the throw is like super short on it. Everything works. So that's it for that. Now, like I said, all we have to do is throw the drive shaft in, and then we'll be done with this whole project. So I think that's gonna be it for today. This has been, I'm sure, a long like grueling process for you guys to watch. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned something. I'm still learning this whole platform. I know a lot about these cars, but the G37s are the ones I know the least amount of. So it's been really nice to be able to get my hands on literally everything that involves this car. Engine, intake, exhaust, I mean, even the diff, trans, clutch, you name it. So I found a lot of similarities with the G35s and 350Zs, and I found some differences and some tricks and stuff. So I've even been learning on this as well. So it's been really nice, but yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. I wasn't planning on doing another part to this build, but because I still have to do like the cleanup stuff, I want you guys to be able to see all of the car together, everything, how it's going to leave. I have to do the fuel pump, some gauges, a couple other like little things that I have to make sure that I wrap up. So there will be one more video with this, and I hope you guys are stoked about it. So yeah, thank you guys for following this process. I hope you guys are enjoying, like I said, and learning stuff. You guys mean the world to me. It's really awesome to see how much positive feedback and love that you guys share. Constantly, like I always say, the DMs and all that type of stuff. So I really appreciate you guys, but couldn't do this without you. I hope you guys have had a fantastic weekend, and I guess I will see you in the last part of the G37. Much love. Peace.